What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, John J. II, here with our GCP contributor, Chuck Parker, big-time Michigan State guy, yacht club member, connoisseur, might have even been to the president. I don't know. He speaks for himself. His accolades speak for himself. Chuck, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Glad to be on. I think I texted you last night when I was in the midst of bid stealing. I was like, I think I have to get on. Thank God for good news today. But yeah, I'm ready to talk college. It's the best time of the year.
Yeah, Chuck talked to me last night. He's like, "Hey, we gotta get on a show no matter what." But this is the scenario. This is what we're dealing with. This is what we're working with. I believe it was Colorado and UNC. They had to win, and it was iffy. It was up in the air at the time, and I was already shaking my boots. Thank God I haven't had a rough night before that, because if I was drunk having to deal with that and having to look at that text, I don't know how I would have dealt with it. But I was sober. Maybe sober would be worse. Maybe that was the worst case scenario. But either way, we're in the tournament, and that's basically the moral of the story. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the show. But we want to talk about Selection Sunday as a whole. Bracketology. This is right below, a notch below Christmas time is March Madness. The big dance is here. So bracketology, everything, tournament challenges. This is what we've all been waiting for, essentially. So we're going to talk about every region somewhat in depth, not really too in depth, but just kind of at a glance. Look at the one seeds, see if they deserve to be there, see if they're ready to compete against these teams. We know everything's possible. Nothing is off the table. So let's just start with the East. So we're looking at UConn versus Stetson. UConn obviously being the one seed. I guess how are we looking at the East? They talked about strength of each region. And they talked about the ease of path to the finish line, which is the championship. They didn't put the East in the easiest of regions to compete in. They actually, Joe Lunardi watched the bracketology service there on ESPN, the broadcast, and they said UConn, they have not as easy of a path as might meet the eye. So, Chuck, you want to shed some light on that? What are we dealing with here in the East region?
Yeah, the East has shaken out pretty tough. You've got four of like the Power Six champions. Auburn won the SEC tournament. Illinois obviously won the Big Ten, and Iowa State won the Big 12. I think it's a pretty strange decision to put all of them in to that one region. I think Iowa State had a real chance at that last one seed. I mean, they dismantled another one seed a day ago. So I'm kind of shocked to see so many conference tournament champions get put into one bracket. It being that you did all that work leading up to this week. It almost seems like they were punished for that, not rewarded.
Yeah, definitely. I was looking at that too. Obviously, Yale with a big win. Auburn with a closeout win today as well against Florida, which that could have went either way. They pulled away towards the end, but they proved to be the more dominant team. But like you said, a lot of conference champions in there. Iowa State already being pretty high up there as far as ranking. At least you can call them low, whatever you want to call it. A low number in the AP polls, getting a big marginal victory over Houston. They could have easily stolen, and I was projecting that they would have stolen that one seed. With that loss, Houston wound up retaining that one seed. But I was looking at that too. I'm like, they got to be close, and they're close in the AP polls. They got a hell of a team. This is a dominating win. Didn't plan out that way, but you got them sitting in the East now as a 2 seed going against South Dakota State. So they're going to make a splash. You can only expect they're going to make a splash. They have some experience in the postseason as of late in the history books for the Cyclones. So it's looking good. Illinois is playing good. I had Wisconsin. I had Wisconsin winning. I thought they were, Greg Gard had those guys in a good position to go out and close out the win, especially after their big win against Purdue, another one seed in the conversation. We're seeing a lot of one seeds fall prior to the tournament, which has got to be causing people to shake some heads, at least with their bracket predictions, their bracket choices. But we're seeing that quite a bit. And there's some other teams in here that we can definitely see making a splash as we see every March. So it's all up in the air, man.
I'll add, I think there's a clear number one team, and then the rest of the tournament. I think we haven't had a back-to-back since Florida, 04, 05. I think UConn's got a great chance. I mean, they have proven all season that they're by far, I think, the best team in college basketball. They don't really have letdowns, and they just seem to be firing on all cylinders, and I know this is a very tough bracket, but I think there's big flaws with all these other teams you're saying. I mean, Iowa State's a defensive team. They'll struggle to score the ball. And Illinois doesn't know how to play defense. And then you look at UConn, and they're just a well-rounded team. I mean, I think the Big East getting 3 teams in is crazy. I think it's one of the most fun, well, probably one of the better leagues out there this year, and you can kind of handle them. I mean, it it'd be scary to see if they get rolling even more because the great teams find another level, and I think this team you'd hope for the rest of that region that they've already peaked. But if they peak, I could see them running away with this. In all honesty, because like I said, I think there's some glaring flaws with these other teams.
Definitely there is, and we're seeing them show their ugly faces earlier than later, before the tournament, right before the tournament, when you'd never want to see them, especially you're sitting at a 1 seed. You already have expectations through the roof for your fan base, the coaching staff. Everybody has those expectations, and you have it reflected by that 1 seed. That number one next to your team name is definitely it puts some pressure on you, and we've seen it happen before. So everyone has you're in their sights, you're in their crosshairs. You got a target on your back as a 1 seed, no matter what. So we're going to see how that plays out. But yeah, looking at Florida Atlantic, Northwestern, obviously very strong contenders. Big win for Michigan State against a Northwestern team, a very poised Northwestern team. I think that might have even been the tip. That might even been the I guess how would you want to call it? The nudge we needed. We'll get into that later. I don't want to
Yeah,
dive too much into that now, but yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. Putting the cart before the horse. I'm notorious for that. But let's move on to the South. Let's move on to the South before we get too much out there with our predictions and whatnot. Houston as the 1 seed as it remains, and I was listening to Dr. Charles McClellan, the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee chairman, and he was basically saying this is the toughest bracket they had to do, and this toughest thing they had to do as a committee since COVID happened. And those are really touchy subjects, especially as a Michigan State fan. Thinking arguably we might have had the best team we've ever brought to a tournament since we won in 2000. So that's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, just COVID as a whole, and in cohesion with the NCAA tournament and March Madness as a whole. But looking at these selections, retaining the 1 seed is Houston. I guess if you want to touch a little bit more on that, I would love to hear it because, like I said, and you said as well, Iowa State and the Cyclones, they had every reason to be able to move into that 1 seed position, but they didn't for whatever reason. I guess why do you think that was decided that way?
I was more thinking Iowa State could maybe bump into that was the spot North Carolina got. Um, I think Houston has deserved it all year. I mean, they're the newcomer into the Big 12, and they slapped all of the major players around. I mean, they beat up Kansas. I think they fully deserved it. I think that loss to Iowa State is a kind of a stylistic one. I think Houston is really good when they're good. The problem is the way they play. You run into a really good defensive team like in Iowa State, and they can struggle to score. Their strength will always be their defense, and that's why they can be such a tough out. But if they don't score, like they didn't score 50 in their conference tournament game, and that's all props to Iowa State. I think it does show flaws kind of offensively with them, but I still think Houston is a very, very competent team, and I think Michigan State would have matched up with them. I think if we were in an 8-9 game, I wouldn't have hated that because it's the first team to 50, and that can play into Michigan State's favor because we don't like to score points every once in a while.
That's
But yeah, I think the story more in this bracket's not Houston. I think the other matchups are incredible. I think this is the bracket you're going to see a lot of upsets. I mean, Wisconsin, who's finally started playing good ball again, got I think the worst draw in the whole tournament. I think that's something to talk about. I mean, John, we saw what James Madison can do firsthand. They haven't changed. I think that's a horribly unlucky draw for a team that started finally playing good.
Yeah, I mean, this James Madison team, since that when you could argue that first game, that first win against our Michigan State Spartans could have lit such a big fire under their tail that just says, "Hey, we only want to get 3 losses this year, max," and they went on and did that. And they played that with that same amount of poise, that same amount of consistency throughout the entirety of their season, and very much deserving of that 12 seed. But to face a team like Wisconsin that beat Purdue in the tournament, to get that draw, especially because this draw was made, this had to have been made within, I guess, do you think it was made within the interim of that ending of the Big Ten championship, or what do you think made that draw happen? You think if
I think
Wisconsin
was
beats Illinois, does that draws has to change?
I would think a little bit. I think Wisconsin kind of played themselves into a hole where 5 was their ceiling. I think even if you become Big Ten champion, like you're not going to be. I could maybe see like them and Illinois just switching. Not they wouldn't be a 3. Like maybe you sneak up to the 4 line, but I mean, Wisconsin in February was one of the worst teams in all of basketball, and they finally figured it out. So I think 5, even with the Big Ten, with winning the Big Ten championship, I think they still probably end up 5. But yeah, I mean, James Madison's the worst 12 seed to find. That's going to be the most popular pick in all upsets, and I truly think it's happened. I think I haven't even looked at lines yet. I think that number is going to be it's going to be close. It's Wisconsin cannot be happy with that. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, that really sucks for a Wisconsin team that's playing really good basketball, and I thought could be primed for a run, but they're gonna have to work that first round.
Yeah, they're gonna have to work, and they're gonna have to work even more, possibly having to face Duke in the second round. So
I
they got
hate
their
this
hands
Duke
full.
team. This isn't the normal Duke teams. They're soft.
Yeah, they are.
Speaking
I
of
mean,
soft,
it's true.
I know you said we weren't going matchup by matchup, but I hated having to root against DJ Burns and North Carolina State because they were terrible all year. And then I think it was I was listening to Mark Titus today, and he's like, NC State's too dumb to realize that they shouldn't be winning games. So like I could see them making a run because they played 5 games in a row and beat teams that are better than them. Like if
Every single
they
time.
yeah, and DJ Burns is electric, and I wouldn't want to be Texas Tech. I wouldn't want to see NC State right now. I think they've got something. They got lightning in a bottle, and I think this is the region you're going to see some of the higher seeds make a Sweet 16, even potentially Elite 8 push because farther down the bracket, Kentucky is what Kentucky is. They can score 100 points, but they also might let up 100. I
Yeah,
think that
that's
Oakland
true.
matchup's going to be awesome. And then Marquette, it's all going to be on the health of Kolek. If sitting him out was what they needed, and he's going to be at 100%, they're super dangerous. If they're not, or if he's playing a little wounded, I just think there's going to be really really fun things happening in the South. This is going to be the hardest bracket to pick.
Yeah, it's true. And that's why I'm really kind of when it comes to constructing the bracket, looking at the South and looking at the matchups and the potential matchups. You got to kind of play it like a chess match, and you got to play a little bit of defense because you can't expect to win every matchup. There's going to be upsets you didn't pick. There's going to be upsets you picked that were not correct. But this NC State team has proven to be arguably the most threatening 11 seed in the tournament, and just to see them in their in their recent gameplay. And you mentioned defense, basically winning games and handicapping teams. That's what they did to North Carolina in that championship game. So we see that defense matters. Obviously, offense matters in essence with the great defense. Offense has to come forth with that. But defense can lock down teams and really create some options for you on the offensive side of the ball, and just to win games and put yourself in a good position to win games, even if you're not shooting too well. So I'm looking at that matchup and NC State itself, the Wolfpack, to make a decent run, at least be poised to ride that momentum out. And you could argue that maybe this break, this lull period, as it's needed, it may hurt them, but it could help them. You never really know how breaks really work. Obviously, having the lack of breaks helped them win, having those 5 in a row, those 5 consecutive games in a row to go on and win that championship in the ACC. But it's gonna be a toss up. It's gonna be a hell of a run for them, and they're gonna make a splash in the South. And I think I know people have their eyes on the Wolfpack and NC State. So it's gonna be exciting, man. Oakland, it's good to see Oakland make the tournament. Another Michigan team,
Love Greg
and
Camp.
Golden Grizzlies. Yeah, Greg Cam, he's a hell of a guy, and they deserve to be there, especially with the season they've had. They played some great basketball, and they're going to face Kentucky, obviously, sitting as a 14 seed. But they made the tournament. They're making a splash. They're making an impact as a Division One school, maybe a lower tier Division One school, but a Division One school, a Division One team nonetheless. And then you got Marquette bringing up the 2 seed in the South, which we know what they're capable of. We know that uh, they have some threatening capabilities to them, and they have some guys that can really do some damage to your team. So I think they're deserving of the 2 seed as well, but maybe an unsung hero as a 2 seed.
Yeah. One more
What are your
thing,
Yeah,
going back to
go for it.
Oakland, if Townsend, if he wants to play, he thinks he's got one more year left. If he wants to play for a bigger school right down the road, I'll take him any day of the week. He dropped, I think, like 30 and 8, like 30 and had double digit rebounds in his championship game. Like, guy's a baller. I love this Oakland team. I think they're gonna. I think Kentucky, but also no, it's Kentucky. They're either really good or really bad. So we're rooting for them. I root for them 364 days a year, except for the one
Yeah.
they play us, obviously.
That's right. But I mean, with the transfer portal and everything like that, and I haven't even really talked to you about the transfer portal and NIL and their, basically how they're infiltrating college sports, not just football, but also basketball. How is that affecting everything? We'll talk about that another day. But with the transfer portal, that definitely, Tom Izzo's got his eyes on some of those guys on this Oakland team that have been making an
One
impact and making a splash.
and yeah, quick thing about that. I think transfer portal in football sucks because you just get Alabama sucking up all the players. Georgia, college basketball, it's the best because it's 12-man rosters and it's a guy who's at a low level, proves it, and then can go be a hero. I mean, we'll talk about him in a little bit with Tennessee, but Dalton Connect. I think this is why this year you look at the bracket outside of UConn, you're like any team can make a run, and a lot of that is because the transfer portal has allowed for so much talent to be spread out to so many teams.
Yeah, and I think with the amount of games and some other factors, it makes it not as detrimental to maybe a good team that might have a bad season. You have that spread out talent, like you said, and you got teams like you said, like Kentucky, that are streaky at best, and there's a lot of teams that are in that conversation. I think our Spartans might even be in that conversation. They definitely
Oh
are.
yeah,
So
we'll
you
get to
have
them.
those teams. If you remain relevant, if you retain that relevance, you're gonna gain some interest from some lower tier D1 schools, and you're gonna if you get offers, you get offers, and that's just kind of how it works in this world of college basketball and transfer portal sports that we're dealing with in this day and age. But it can definitely benefit, and there's really no shortage of talent. Talent will find its way and it'll find its path no matter what. So it's definitely more tolerable in basketball than football, I would say. Good deal. Let's move on to the Midwest. Purdue, obviously, number 1 seed. Zach Edey, I'm going to say it once. I'm going to say it. I've said it a million times on this show. He was made in a lab. Okay. We're just going to say that. Everyone's too afraid to say it. I'm going to say it. And that's just reality of the situation. He's proven to be human. They've lost games. They lost to a good Wisconsin team that played a good game and closed out a game, which is really more important than playing good, and that is closing out games. But how do you feel with Purdue as a 1 seed, obviously playing a play-in team with all these 1 seeds that are doing that, except for the top 2 regions, obviously. But I guess they're playing good. Matt Painter has a hold on this team, and they look good. There's nothing you can really take away from them when it comes to their play. So
Yeah, Purdue deserves the 1 seed. I'm not going to argue that. And Purdue owns me. And if there's Purdue fans that are going to listen to this, everything I say is from a place of pure, just beaten down hatred at this point. I mean, I hate what Zach Edey does. I hate the style of basketball they play. And this team is better than the team that lost to a 16 seed. I don't expect that to happen. I'm going to take a team money line against them every time because the path to beat them is just when the officiating is different. Like, it's so dumb to complain about that, but the fact that in the Big Ten tournament, when Michigan State, I think, was called pretty poorly, and against Wisconsin, it's atrocious. Like, I get that there is a skill in getting fouls drawn and not committing them, but the way Zach E's reffed and the way they just have steamrolled the Big Ten has been a lot in part, I think, with refs. Like, they're a great team. I think the guards play better, but if they're not shooting 25 more foul shots than their opponent, I don't see ways they will just win a game. I mean, Wisconsin beat them, and I think in the overtime, I think their last like 12 points were all free throws. They didn't score a single basket in overtime. It's all free throws. And there's fouls you see get called on Zach Edey that are just blatant. Like in Michigan State, we've got players bleeding on the ground, and it's not a foul on Zach Edey, it's a foul on us. I will I will be cracking the biggest bottle of champagne when Purdue makes an exit before the sweet Final Four. I don't see a way they win because if Edey gets in foul trouble, they're dead. If the free throw disparity is close, they're dead. I don't believe in this Purdue team. Good job on the 1 seed. I hope you lose again.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about nerfing Zach Edey in the paint, and you got Malik Hall, which he's 6'9", by the way. Yeah, I know Zach Edey's 7'4", and he's a towering mountain of a man. But you got to be able to nerf. It can't be a one size fits all when it comes to officiating Zach Edey. He is the anomaly. He is the exception to the rule when it comes to being able to defend somebody. And I officiate basketball for the MHSAA, so I know when you got a player that has leverage, there's only a certain amount of things you can do, and if it might tread on the borderline of illegality, of illegal defending. But if you're just trying to get position and get vertical, and you're getting tangled up with a guy, and it's just kind of like you're trying to get to where you can get defensive, it's really almost impossible to do that because Zach, it's basically equal contact. It's going both ways. You're seeing it go both ways. When you're defending a man like Zach Edey, you have to find a new way to play defense. You're not defending a normal basketball player. So it's just difficult to watch that happen. Watch him get the tic tac fouls. Watch him not be able to really take contact. Seeing him flinch going up when he's barely getting hit, and he's 7 foot tall, 7'5". So it's tough to watch, and I hate watching it because he gets bailed out more times than not. He's scoring 30 plus points a game, and most of those are free throws. He can hit his free throws, so I will give him that. With his height basically
He's a
being level, he's a hell of
he's
a
a
shooter.
talented player. I'm never gonna say he's bad. He's just tall. It's just infuriating to watch. It's
Right.
watching a Purdue game. You know how it's gonna go, and it's infuriating. And I'm going to be popping a bottle of champagne when they lose because I don't see a way that this team can make a deep run. Like I know that they're good again. I know that their guards have played better. They've grown up. It's just they thread this line with the Big Ten refs where they know he's not going to get in foul trouble and he's going to get to the line. You get somebody who's a not used to refing him, and they're just that's how it works. They're gonna call it different. The Big Ten calls it all the same because they see him. They know kind of how it goes. And I'm not saying that they call it in. They probably do, but I I
Probably do.
think there's gonna be a game where all of a sudden you're like, wait, we shot 12 free throws this game, like a normal team does, and where they go from there, I don't know because Wisconsin showed them like they didn't get to the rim. Like, it's just yeah. I could go on for about Purdue forever, so let's move on. It's
Yeah, we got to.
I'm so glad Zach Edey's gone.
Yeah.
The
This is his
big
last year, and he's going to play against some real men. It might be not as good of basketball across the board, but he's going to play at the next level, and I think he will be humbled by men
yeah.
that are his height or taller at the next level. And he'll obviously make it there. But this is what I expect. I expect to see another broken whiteboard in the locker room of the Purdue Boilermakers after the first round. That's all I'm going to say. And it might not even be the first round; it might be the second round. But no matter what, this team is expecting to go all the way. And they did. They have in years past, and they fallen short. So we're expecting a lot of the same going into this year. You got Gonzaga as a 5 seed, which you're not really used to seeing. Kansas at a 4 seed, also more of a not as big of a seed as you're used to. But yeah, go for it.
This is the Gonzaga. Glad you brought this up. Be ready for the McNeese. The McNeese Cowboys are a legit good team. It's Will Wade, LSU, FBI was tracking him. This guy's he might cheat. He's a stone cold winner. If you haven't seen any of their games, honestly, kind of shame on you. This is one of the most fun teams in basketball. My buddy Mitch, he's an East Lansing alum as well. He put me onto them, and you watch their games. They just make threes and they play stellar defense. They steal the ball, they run. I think Gonzaga is in trouble in that matchup. It's the spread's going to be big. Sprinkle the money line. This is McNeese is very fun and they're very dangerous, and nobody's going to talk about them because they play in a smaller conference.
Yeah, that's right. I saw them going crazy when they got their draw, and I think they want Gonzaga. They want the Zags, and they
They
said, yeah,
wanted anybody. They wanted
they would.
everybody. They're
And you
so
got
good at
teams that are
basketball.
gritty. You got teams that are gritty like that. They can take on anybody and give them a hell of a time. And they're hell raisers, is what they
Oh
call them.
yeah.
So That's what I'm expecting, man. That's March Madness basketball. I don't think I've ever seen McNeese in the 68 teams
You got it. Yeah, they're
conversation
so
on
good,
Selection
so
Sunday.
fun. They're
So
so
I'm,
fun.
I'm excited. I've heard great things. I've heard great things about them, but I'm glad to hear that corroborated from you and your buddy Mitch's, him putting you on and whatnot. So I'm be watching them very closely, and might even be one of my upsets. So
I love it.
it might have to be. It might have to be. Gonzaga is just not the team that they have been in years past. So
I
that could
mean,
that could be all it
they.
takes.
I don't get how they. I mean, yeah, they beat Kentucky at Rupp. I don't get Gonzaga. I mean, I'm not a bracketologist. Gonzaga doesn't seem like a 5 seed to me. I mean, they had to win it. I think it was 6 weeks ago we were talking Gonzaga might miss the tournament for the first time ever, and they didn't win their conference tournament, but now they're a 5 seed. Like they had one good win at Kentucky, but we know Kentucky can't play defense. So I think it's a good draw. I like McNeese. That's my take them money line. Fuck the points.
Well, and you could argue Gonzaga is one of those default teams that kind of just gets in
I think
because
so.
they're Gonzaga, you know. So uh, I think we can see some weakness there, not only with their draw and the committee making them a 5 seed, but them being here at all. So
Oh yeah.
that can be said. Kansas also in there facing Samford, sitting at the 4 seed. You got South Carolina as a 6 seed, Oregon as an 11 seed. They're going to be dangerous as an 11 seed. Still pissed they won that game last night against Colorado.
Oh, it's so
It kept
brutal.
me up. It kept me up a little bit more than I expected it to, Chuck, because I was trying to get to bed at a nice hour. I stayed up till 7 a.m. the night before playing poker, and I lost, by the way, too. So pissed off about that. Pissed off about staying up till the crack of dawn, and then I got to watch Oregon win against the Colorado team, and I know they can't really win. We got to squeak by the cubes on our nutsack. So that's just kind of how it happened. Creighton sitting at the 3 seed. They're a hell of a team. They're going to be making a splash. They're going to be dangerous. Texas at the 7, and then Tennessee against St. Peter's. St. Peter's is a familiar face in this tournament, which we're happy to see them back, especially under new management.
I'd love to see them beat Tennessee. I think Tennessee's going to be Tennessee's an interesting team. I mean, I think they're really good. There's always the Rick Barnes in March. I think they kind of vanquished that a little bit last year. And when Dalton connects, playing like Dalton Connect, they're going to be a really tough out for just about anybody.
Definitely. I mean, Connect, he's a hell of a player. He facilitates that team, and he's basically he emulates Tennessee Volunteers basketball, and he's going to have to. He's going to have to. They're playing a poised St. Peter's team, which is definitely happy to be there again.
Oh yeah,
But
for sure.
the Midwest is really nothing to wave your nose at. It's one of those regions where anything could happen. It's kind of like you can say that as a blanket statement to any of these regions, but with the anomalies that you're seeing, and nothing is for sure. We know that, but you can try to make a picture in your head, paint a picture, paint a prophecy. But there's teams that can make a splash. You know that they're good. Are they going to show up or not? There's a lot of those teams in the Midwest. So it's going to be exciting to see. Moving on to the final region of the 4. Obviously, not talking too much about the play-in. We'll talk about that more, and you'll see me on Twitter blabbing about the first 4, who they'll be playing in the play-in tournament and their matchups going forward. We still got a couple days, guys. We got to give them a couple days break following these conference championships. But moving on to the West region, North Carolina retains the 1 seed after a big loss to NC State. And they're proven that they cannot infiltrate a defense. RJ Davis cannot infiltrate a defense. If you got a strong middle core in your defense, you blocking the paint off. And we call it like this in soccer. You fill the box. I guess you can call the paint the box in basketball. That's what they did against North Carolina. So sitting as a shaky 1 seed, North Carolina and the Tar Heels. And Hubert Davis has got to be shaking a little bit too after what the Wolfpack did to him. But what are we looking at here in the West?
Is this we're gonna start getting into a little Michigan State stuff? The West is incredibly winnable. I think from a lot of teams, I think it is very weak. I think Alabama is bad. Um, Alabama gets exposed. I mean, they lost by 100 to Florida a couple of times. These are the top seeds. Baylor's always a 3 seed, so I just expect to see them there. And Arizona kind of lives and dies by Caleb Love. I think the West is truly open, which is great for Michigan State. I think it's going to be a team that catches lightning in the bottle and makes a run because I think it's probably one of the weaker of the four. And I'm excited, and I'd like to get some of your thoughts on it because I think North Carolina's played really well. I think the ACC isn't very good. I think the ACC hasn't been good for a while, and yeah, North Carolina as a one doesn't. It's not like a UConn where you're like, hey, I'm going to pencil them in the Elite Eight, and maybe they lose a little game before the Final Four. I can see UNC losing in every round. It's going to be a fun bracket because I think you'll get some of the lower numbers while having one team. I think New Mexico is incredible. Like I think you're going to see some high seeds pretty deep into this bracket. I don't know what you're thinking about this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just to touch on UNC real quick, I look at Armando Bacot. Look at Armando Bacot, veteran guy. He reminds me of a very familiar face at the center position. And just with his inconsistency, his streakiness, his ability to, do great things, but more often than not, he's going to drop the ball. He's going to fumble the bag more times than not. And obviously, I'm talking about our good buddy, Madi Sissoko. And it's just like
Great
you
guy.
got size. You got size. He's a great guy, great guy, great guy. But at the center position, to be the guy, I don't know if that's the right call. And Tom Izzo, some things that he does, it's questionable. It's questionable. But I know he's a man that knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for a very long time. But some of the decisions that he makes, coaching wise, and to play players for a certain amount of minutes. And now I've seen the streakiness with Booker as well. So it's not like we're just talking about. I don't think Michigan State has a five guy. They don't have a center that they can count on. They don't have an Adrian Payne. They don't have they don't have a Tillman. They don't have any of those guys. Those are guys that are in years past. But I'm looking at this West region. You look at like you said, teams like New Mexico. They're gonna do hell of a great things. Grand Canyon. I don't know if they're gonna really make a splash against St. Mary's, but they've proven to play great basketball as well. And Baylor, they're shaky at best. So sitting at a 3 seed, you're looking at kind of flip flop, and there's a lot of opportunities for upsets just right in the first round that I'm looking at very closely. I'm gonna be looking at some past performances from individual players, games, etc. And you can't take it really as gospel because it's so much about who's going to show up, who's going to play the game of basketball at any given day. And we know that. I preach that every single time, every year, every podcast. It's really it's even more important. Yes, it's important in football, but it's even more important, I think, in basketball and in March Madness, because you got to put yourself in that mindset to, we really got to show up. We really got to execute. We got to make our threes. We at least got to go, 45% from the three. And that's what
Yeah.
Michigan State has also struggled with. So I
Yeah, and
guess I'm
that's
looking at the
where
West. There's a lot of holes. There's a lot of holes in the West.
I think we started seeing the flashes of it in a bunch of. I think it's like those. It's a loss to Purdue. It's some of the two of the probably best 2 game stretch Michigan State put together, just even effort wise. Because that's the thing with this team I've been so down on. It's sometimes shots miss, and that's fine, but it's the effort part that kills me because sometimes you see like AJ Hogard and he's I can't stand him sometimes. It's like, dude, do you even want to play basketball? And it's kind of a common theme if you're on Michigan State Twitter. It's questioning AJ Hogard. I mean, he's our senior leader. Like, I think that this team looks different if there wasn't that horrific injury to Fears with gun violence. And I think this team is primed for a run if they can just piece together some games, which is that's the problem. That's what you're asking them to do, something they haven't done all year. But the bracket's there. If I think North Carolina's gonna be perfect because if we can get to that game, I think Mississippi State's not great. They're good at offensive rebounding, but I think if you can take care of them, you have a matchup with UNC that it's kind of strength on strength. It's going to be guards against guards. Let Bacot have his. Who cares? But if the guards we just get consistent effort out of everybody, I think this team is primed for a deep run. I mean, we have the talent, and that's been the hard part all year. Is the talent's there, but yeah, I'm kind of wondering where you're at on the
So,
Spartans.
so I get a great kick out of. I'm buddies with Chuck on Snapchat, and he always posts the state of MSU basketball. He does a hell of a job doing it. I get a kick out of it every time, win or lose. I get a kick out of it. It's just it's kind of, especially at a loss. It's like, okay, all right, Chuck's with me on this, so it makes me feel good. You talk about guys like Fears that really, the gun violence and things like that, very unfortunate, very, short lived as far as being able to grow with a veteran crew as a Michigan State Spartan could have very well been an asset going into the tournament.
I think
What's
he might
going
have
on with
started.
Cohen? Yeah, what's going on with Cohen Carr? Is he not playing, or what's the deal with him?
The I try not to get that too down on Izzo because obviously I trust Izzo. I hate when we go too big lineup because our bigs can't score. Like that's the one that really bothers me. And Carr needs time. He is so raw and he's so athletic and he gives you the great energy. I think we've been using him better where you put him in defensive, like you go be you and run around. The problem is when you get into like a close offensive game, he's almost a no guard and they just box him out because he has to develop a jump shot, which I think he will. I don't think he can go to the league this year. I think he's going to stand down there. And if he can develop even a semblance of a jump shot by the start of next season, he's going to be the most dangerous player on the court because people have kind of learned to stay off of him. Like if he's getting the ball near the 3 point line, he's not shooting it.
Right.
So I think Cohen Carson would be such a great piece to plug and play, and I hope we go small a little bit more. I mean, we've seen Cohen Carr block 7-4 Zach Edey. Like he's such a versatile weapon, and as long as we can use him right, it's going to be great. But you have to understand the offensive. Unless it's an alley oop, his offensive significance isn't great. But I think he's a terrific rebounder, great energy guy, and I think he'll have some very good March moments if we can prolong a run because you need a guy like that. But I mean, it comes down to me. It's we can all yell at the five position, which infuriates me as well. Like, Matty Sissoko is a great story, and I love him as a person. He seems like one of the nicest guy ever. He just can't play basketball. Like he sometimes is a liability out there. But it's going to come down to our guards. It's why we were number 4 in the country to start the season. It's we have a veteran backcourt that has to show up.
Yeah, I guess you talk about the rising stars. What name comes to mind? Trey Holloman. Okay, I'd even put Malik Hall in that situation as well because he's been streaky at best. You've seen him make some splashes. Obviously, Tyson Walker, and I preached about it all season long up until this point. The one-man band story with Tyson Walker. So it's I don't want to see as much of that. I want to see AJ Hogard relieve some of the stress off of Tyson Walker because there's so much pressure put on him. But really, he should be doing that automatically. If not that, he
Yeah,
should be out playing Tyson Walker. Trey Holloman mentioned him, Malik Hall. You got, Cooper coming in there doing some work. Jackson Kohler did some work as of late too in the Northwestern game. So there's players in there that show this streaky successes that really give you the glimpse. Okay, maybe that's what Tom Izzo sees in him. Maybe that's what he's seeing that I don't see. He might see things off the court that I'm not seeing
yeah.
on TV. So it's just one of those things where it's seeing that potential shine forth and really come alive on the main stage that maybe we haven't seen as much of, but we have to see now.
The key
So
is going to be
yeah,
Jaden Akins on the offensive end. His defense has been. I mean, nobody's going to look at Jaden Akins and say he's a bad basketball player. I think he's fantastic, and I think he's our X factor. I think Malik had a really good Big Ten season. I mean, if you look at his numbers outside of the blank, like I think he had a trillion. Like I think he had a really big trillion against the first time against Northwestern. But I think he's been really good. I think he gives us what he needs. And Tyson, the problem, like he got hurt. Like his numbers haven't been as good, but he got hurt because early in the year he'd have to drop 30 for us to be in the game. And the key is going to be Jaden Akins offensively. When his shots are falling, we're unbeatable. Like I mean, that's what you saw in Baylor and all of our big wins. It's AJ not turning the ball over, just being a solid point guard, and it's Jaden Akins being unstoppable from 3. Like if no team's going to beat us if Jaden Akins is shooting 50%. I don't think. That's the thing we need. It's the 1-2 punch of Tyson and Jaden Akins because you're going to have to leave one of them if one's hot, and if the other's a good compliment, it's still one of the best backcourts in the country. They just never play like it, which is the infuriating part. It's why I've quit on this
yeah,
team 100
exactly.
times.
They can
It's
play
I've
good. It's not like you just expect them to play good by blind luck. They can play good.
no,
You've seen them do it. You've seen them dominate teams like Baylor sitting at a 3 seed still. And there's a lot of those games that are like that you can add to your list of games. So maybe not as many, maybe not the biggest list of games, and you have some of those wins that you have to get. A lot of losses that we took, we really shouldn't have taken. Probably shouldn't,
We could be at a 2 seed
can't
right
take.
now. We could be at a 2
We
seed right
could.
now if we close out a few games, and this is why I love basketball. I love Tom Izzo. It's unlike football is like, yeah, but there's stops. Like in college basketball, you truly live and die by every second that takes off the clock,
Yep.
and it's my favorite form of energy. And I was explaining to my friends because I think I love Michigan State basketball as much as the next guy, maybe even more. And I uh I described Michigan State basketball. It was after one terrible loss or whatever other one. Like they're my toxic ex. I They hurt me, and then the next night I'm like, maybe it's gonna be different this time. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
at.
That's a
That's what I'm
great
at.
comparison.
Yeah, and
That's a
that's what I'm
great.
at right
I've
now.
never heard that, but wow.
Like she fucked my best friend, but like this time it's gonna be different. And that's what I'm
Maybe
hoping for
she's
this
still the
tournament.
one though. I don't want to count this one out
Yeah.
completely.
And like we had some really good times together.
Yeah,
And even
that's
though the
right.
last
That's
time
right.
it hurt really bad, I'm gonna believe again. And I do think this team, if sometimes it's like with an ex, like sometimes you're just thinking about memories, but I think this team is primed for a run. They just have to kind of get out of their own way and play basketball.
Definitely, 100% well said, and they definitely like that, and I'm a fan of a lot of different sports teams in different sports themselves, but I don't think I'm even close. It's not even in the same realm of the amount of fandom that I have for this Michigan State basketball program, just the program as a whole. No matter what team they have,
Oh,
I'm gonna ride or die
100%.
with them. And I can't really say that about any other team, any other sport, anything. And it's just it's the Michigan State men's basketball program that I'm such a big fan of, and I'll follow it no matter what. So it's just kind of it's one of those things that hurts you when they do get in their own way, and it happens more times than not. And we think it burns us and it hurts us to the core. I can't even imagine what Izzo's going through because he
Yeah.
knows it too, but he feels it 100 times more than we do.
And
So
in Izzo we trust. I think we're gonna have a great lineup, and I think he's gonna tell these guys that yeah, the streak continued. You're not going to be remembered for that, but I don't think a lot of these seniors, outside Tyson Walker, is probably one of my favorite players to ever wear that I can remember wearing the Michigan State jersey. Like these seniors aren't going to be remembered as winners. They're not remembered in a very fair light because they haven't done anything. And I think if they have any, I think they have a desire, and I think Izzo's going to go in there and say, "Hey guys, everything they say about you and everything, it's what I say about them. Like I'm part of the problem, but like everything they say about you, you can erase that with 4 games. You make a Final Four, you're immortalized here, and we
definitely.
got to get back to get back to that program standard. And I'm back to believing. I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to fire up, and it's a winnable. You get past UNC, and it's a completely winnable bracket.
Oh, 100%. I mean, a Final Four appearance is, exponentially more possible when that happens.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, like you said, as far as being remembered as a crew, they're nowhere near to the, Cassius Winston era or the Valentine, Draymond Green, Bryn Forbes Spartans of years
Yeah.
past. They just don't have that cohesion, that remembrance factor as a unit that we have seen, and it has shown very brightly amongst the fans, alumni, everybody that follows Michigan State basketball. Those teams are remembered. And they will be etched in stone as some of the best to wear the colors. So it's definitely a truth. It's definitely told to them, especially the seniors, and I'm sure Izzo has told them. That's kind of the harsh truth. But if you can make a splash and really make an impact on your way out, this is your chance to do it. We've been given a glimmer of hope. Uh, don't let it go to the wayside, basically. And he better be telling them that right now, maybe as we speak. So I'm excited, man. We got a chance. We're in. There's a lot to be, happy about. Moving on. Thursday is on the clock. Mississippi State is on the clock. Last thing, Chuck, what does Michigan State need to do as a whole, just to make it and give their best effort? What do they have to do? What are the non-negotiables that they have to accomplish going forward?
I think it's the effort. I think what has been a problem in a lot of these games, and we should have known from that scrimmage against Tennessee before the season even started, is we can't start slow. I think we get behind the 8 ball too often, and then you're fighting and clawing to get back in. Just win the first 4 minutes of the first game, and I think we're going to be okay. But if we are fighting tooth and nail just to make it a game. I mean, that's what happened against Purdue. Is you go down by a little and you can cut it to 3, but getting up 3, coming back from 8 is really hard because at some point they're going to score again, no matter how good a defense you play. So what I'm just looking for is come out in those first 4 minutes and dominate the game and set the tone for the rest of the tournament. Because if they come out sheepish and slow like we do, and we might make a run, but it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be it's going to be really hard. Just for 4 minutes from the opening tip till that first immediate timeout, win, and then we're good. I think truly.
Definitely set the tone, because you set the tone those first 4 minutes. That'll set the tone regardless, win or lose, or how fast or slow you come out. That will set the tone in subsequent games. What win or lose in that first game, it will set the tone
Yep.
going forward.
And
So
I'm not going to say it's going to be easy if you win those first 4 minutes, but if you just come out and win the first 4 minutes, then it's like, hey, we're meant to be here. We're not the pity brand invite for TV views. We're meant to be here. We're a good basketball team because we are a good basketball team. We just don't ever play like a good basketball team.
very true, very true. Good deal. We'll leave it at that, guys. Make sure to follow all the March Madness action. We'll be sure to cover it too. Follow me on Twitter, MSU Twitter. I'm live. I'm always on there. I'm yabbing. I'm jabbing. I'm taking shots at our own team. I'm hypercritical of our own team because I know they're capable of more. So we're going to be following all the action going up from now until Thursday, but there's a lot of action to come, game times, odds, lines, everything. So we're pulling for the boys in green and white. To wear the only colors is a blessing, and their fan base is monumental, as we know. So good. We'll leave it at that. Make sure to check us out on our website, ginsportsnetwork.com. Follow us on IG at Gin Sports Network and at Gin College. And we'll see you guys here next time. I'm John J. II here with the GCP alongside Chuck Parker. Have a great night.